I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and in Suffern, New York. I lived with two different brothers on those occasions, and my mother passed away when I was 7, and from then on it was me any place they could find to deposit me. So I wound up with different brothers and cousin uh, and so on. And my brothers and father mistreated me, beat me pretty badly, and I lost my home, went to a cousin, and he treated me real well. I lived with him about 2 years. He was a contractor with the horses, and Saturdays I used to drive a horse-drawn roller, and then he was paving streets in Garrettson Beach. That's off of Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, and he would give me a nickel or a dime once in a while, so I could buy some lunch, and you could buy a piece of pie for a nickel, and that would be my lunch. And if he didn't give me anything, I didn't eat. So it was a starvation situation. Essentially, that's it, but I was taken in as one of the family, and they treated me well. And my father finally found me there when I finished grade school, and he came and got me, and I finished up the education. I graduated grade school, and I went to work, and I kept getting fired because I was too young. So that limited me, and I decided to be 21 years old when I wasn't, and that's how I got into 3 C's. So essentially that phase of it ended there. 1934, that I was through with education, and I desperately needed a place to stay, and my father wasn't somebody to live with at all. And the last beating he gave me, he went after a butcher knife and came after me with this knife. I went out the door and I never went back home. I was 14 at the time. In the C's, I was there so long that I did quite a few things. I blasted the parking lot at the bridgehead, and the man that took me in, he showed me how to drill and blast, set the charges off, and I worked on it in the bridgehead parking lot. And after I got through with that, I went to work on the Pass Lake, or the thing that the underpass on the other side of the bridge. I worked on most of that. I worked on the guardrails, hauling them out of the woods. We hauled them by hand to the truck, and I had to dump them off at the piers at the highway. And I did plumbing work, electrical work, and figured it out for myself. I was given the job and I did it. So I was busy. Actually, I had good experience in the 3 C's. I knew when I came out here that I wasn't going back to New York.
Yeah.
That was a foregone conclusion. When we drove down the road to the camp, I thought, I'm not going back, and I didn't go back. So I spent 2 years working there at Deception Pass Park. And I quit and just went to work whatever I could do, spading gardens, scraping paint, just general labor work. Well, I never was a dreamer. I didn't think of things that were not permissible or within my reach. So I just lived from day to day, from time to time, and went that way. We didn't buy big cars. We didn't buy big clothing, you know. We just lived from day to day. And I know when I reached $1 million, that I told my wife I got a letter from General Electric saying I was a member of the Millionaire Club. And she didn't say a word, nothing. So we just lived on, and when I saw all this money, I decided to give it away. The loggers were going to cut it down, and by protecting it, it's going to protect it. The kids can see what their 1,000-year-old tree looked like. There's a 1,000-year-old tree on every trail, the Heart Lake Trail, the Whistle Lake Trail, and the North Beach Trail on Whidbey Island. Each have a 1,000-year-old tree on it. So you could go there on these trails and you could see these trees that are still growing. So I'm preserving the forest lands. Be easy to get along with, and I think if your attitude is right, negative attitude doesn't help you. So make sure that you are happy, you get along with people, don't argue. Just don't argue, and just do the best you can with what you have. And if you don't get something you want, forget about it. That's the way it is. It isn't going to change because you're mad.